rock and roll. Awesome. Alrighty, I'm Paige, I'm an alcoholic. And welcome everyone. We're going to be kicking off where we left off last week, because that's the logical way to do it. Oh, I got to talk slower in this one. Sorry, some of the big book studies, they let me talk as fast as I want. This one, I got to slow it down. Oh, I'm there. And so where we're kicking off is very top of page 26. And yes, awesome. Thank you for the reminder. Always helpful, always helpful. And we're kicking it off page 26, first paragraph. It says, a certain American businessman had ability, good sense, and high character. So this is our homie. He doesn't have to be your homie, but he's my homie by the name of, and I'll throw it up on the screen, by the name of Roland Hazard. And he's the guy way up here. Whoop. And I always like to joke, oh, what a handsome fella. So this is Roland Hazard. And I put him up there so we can also figure out how to spell his name, because it's not intuitive. Hazard a guess as to how to spell it? Ooh, it's tricky. ROWLANDHAZARD. And actually, he's Roland Hazard the Third. So he comes from money. You know, anyone that's got a the Third after their name, you can tell he comes from wealth, he comes from money. And what it's saying is he's got ability. He's an able, capable person. Anyone feel like that? He has good sense. Do we feel like we have good sense? And high character, like he's got morals, he's got values. But what we're going to see is that he is an alcoholic. It says for years he had floundered from one sanitarium to another. When we see sanitarium, think rehab, detox, treatment center, sober living, floundering, like he's relapsing off after going to these things again and again and again. Anyone here ever done a lot of treatment, rehab, doctor, psychologist, floundered? You know what I mean? Floundered. And it says he had consulted the best known American psychiatrists. So he's got money at this thing. So I believe, and Howard's not here yet to correct me, so I can say what I want. But I believe his family was in textiles. And how I always talk about Roland Hazard is I'm like, they had so much money that when the Great Depression hit, they had to sell off one or two of their yachts. You know what I mean? They were good. They were fine. He is in money, money, money. And what we're talking about is this idea is that coming from a good family does not prevent us from having alcoholism. Coming from money and having a lot of money does not prevent us from having alcoholism. And what we're going to see is that Roland Hazard, he's throwing all his money at this problem, and all the money, all the power, all the resources is not sufficient for people like us, alcoholics, to stay sober. So he sees the best of the best of the best, and it does not work. It says, then he had gone to Europe, placing himself in the care of this celebrated physician, the psychiatrist, Dr. Young, who prescribed for him. So he goes all the way to, I was going to say Sweden. It's Switzerland. I don't got much that's going on for me, but I'm like, geography, I got that one on point. So I got to get that one right. So he goes all the way to Switzerland to work with Dr. Carl Jung. And oftentimes when we hear this story of Roland Hazard and seeing Carl Jung, and I've shared this story, the idea in it was that he wanted to see Sigmund Freud first. Now, I'm going to be historically accurate, even though I don't have anyone to call me out on it, is that it's probably not true. There's not any evidence that he wanted to see Sigmund Freud or he wanted to see Adler. But why would that get repeated? Why would that, historically inaccurate, and as you guys know, I never let the truth get in the way of a good story. You know what I mean? So why would that story make its way into, AA legends, maybe more AA myths, but whatever. Why? Well, for our purposes, Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud, they studied together, and they were contemporaries of each other, and then they had a falling out. Now, they disagreed on a number of things, but the main thing that they disagreed on for our purposes, oh, Howard's here. Allied Chem, Dow Chem, it came from their companies. Oh, amazing. And Joe and Charlie said that. Yeah, Howard's here. We got my fact checker. And don't worry, Kathy's going to keep the fact checker in line. So we got all of that. But it's like, so yeah, the story of like, why would that be reproduced? That story be reproduced? Quite factually, it would be because Joe and Charlie repeated that story. But for our purposes, what is the lesson? What is the lesson that we're trying to glean from this factually inaccurate story? That Roland Hazard wanted to see Sigmund Freud, but Freud wasn't accepting new patients and he had to slum it with Dr. Carl Jung. Well, I always say, doesn't a spiritual experience begin with me not getting what I want? But Carl Jung and Roland Hazard, or Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud, they believed for a period of time a lot of the same things. But the main piece of difference that matters for us is that Sigmund Freud believed all matters of the mind could be solved in and of the mind, where Carl Jung believed that there were certain conditions that required the real outside help, God, that required a spiritual experience. So even though Roland Hazard only had intention to see Carl Jung and he had the money to get what he wants, that myth is perpetuated. And so Joe and Charlie, God bless them, they popularized big book studies, but also I think because of the lesson that is gleaned. That idea that no human power is sufficient. So he had then gone to Europe, placing himself in the care of a celebrated physician, the psychiatrist Dr. Jung, who prescribed for him. So he did some intensive work with Carl Jung. And it says, though experience had made him skeptical, he finished his treatment with unusual confidence. So can we relate to that? What was his experience? His experience was that every single time that he had gone to, well, I'll put in little bunny ears, rehab, any single time he had sought treatment for his problem, he had relapsed. And to be fair, Roland Hazard was looking for a harm reduction approach. He was really like, I want to find a way that I can still drink. But he was not able to drink successfully. And he would relapse. So that is his experience had made him skeptical. His experience was like, I don't know if anything could help me. But he finished his treatment with unusual confidence. I'll stop the share just so we can see each other a little bit. Hey, great time and welcome. So the unusual confidence, has anyone ever left treatment and said, this time's different? Anyone ever gotten sober and said, this time feels different? You know what I mean? Have I been there? Because I want to see myself in Roland Hazard's story, even if I don't have the money for yachts. I just assume he had yachts. Howard will tell us if he did not have any water. Yeah, he had watercraft. He was on the water. He's got money. So it says his physical and mental condition were unusually good. So he's feeling good. Anyone leave treatment, leave rehab, feeling good? Above all, he believed he had acquired such a profound knowledge of the inner workings of his mind and its hidden springs that relapse was unthinkable. What that means is, above all, he felt like, man, I know myself so well. I know my motivations, I know my thoughts, I know my triggers, I know I worked through some of my trauma. Like, he was like, I know who I am. I've acquired self-knowledge. And one of the things that we're going to emphasize, bless you, I know it's the worst when I do that and I catch that and bless you. But one of the things that we want to see is that self-knowledge will not keep me sober. will not keep me sober. Actually, before the meeting, we were kind of talking about how Paige has a hard time saying no to service. And the result of it is I'm doing like 9 big book studies this week, but, up from my usual 4 a week. And sometimes it's like asking like, hey, Paige, can you quote some of this stuff from memory? Yes. And that will not keep me sober. I can tell you Roland Hazard's story from memory, and that will not keep me sober. I can quote parts of the book here and there, and that will not keep me sober. I got the fun facts about, about Sigmund Freud. That will not keep me sober. What is in here cannot keep me sober. But, normally I don't leave a natural cliffhanger, but I'm going to, so let's stay tuned and find out what will keep us sober. Exciting. The thrilling conclusion of there is a solution. I say optimistically, what if I don't finish this chapter? It's me. All right. So relapse was unthinkable. He knows himself. He's got self-knowledge. There is absolutely no way Roland Hazard would possibly relapse. Nevertheless, he was drunk in a short time. And if you're writing in your book, what I would like you to do is make a little note that says the mental obsession. Because what happened before he took the drink was that he had a thought that told him, this time will be different. Nobody will ever know. There's no alcoholics in France. I'm in Africa on safari. I can drink this time. Here's how. I'm referencing 2 stories about Roland Hazard. That's that he did have a relapse in Africa. And then there's a story about how he drank in France. So I just tie it in with geography. So, more baffling still, he could give himself no satisfactory explanation for his fall. Have I ever had that experience? Can I relate to that? Where I drank again, and after that relapse, I'm trying to be classy, so I scrape myself off the bathroom floor, as opposed to where I normally find myself post-relapse, behind a dumpster, like a lady. But that scraping myself off the bathroom floor, and I try to look myself in the mirror and I can't do it. And I don't know what happened. Why did I do it? You know that feeling? That deep guilt and shame and remorse. And he had that. And so he returned to the doctor whom he admired and asked him point blank why he could not recover. And so this is the visual that I have, which is absolutely historically accurate. If Howard corrects anything in the chat, just ignore him. It's not true. So, he's got to go take his boat, and he's got to travel and trains and all of that to go to Switzerland. And he knocks on the door, and he's like, Carl! Because that's how, he's angry. He's angry. Carl, what the heck, dude? Do you know how expensive you are? I know I got money for boats. Money for boats for days, but what the heck? You know what I mean? What the heck? And so he's asking him point blank. So he's not, like, why can't I stay sober? What happened? And keep in mind the doctor whom he admired, Dr. Carl Jung, is one of the most famous psychologists in the world. Probably second only in fame to like Sigmund Freud. But his work is studied and has had an influence on culture and society. And he's asking why he could not recover. It says he wished above all things, so he wanted more than anything else to regain self-control. He seemed quite rational and well-balanced with respect to other problems. Can we look at our own experience? Do I have experience where with other problems in my life, I'm rational, I'm well-balanced, I can show up, I can overcome other problems in my life, but not my alcoholism? And it says, yet he had no control whatever over alcohol. Why was this? He begged the doctor to tell him the whole truth. And so how that went was like, Homie Jay, tell me the whole truth, my man. That's verbatim. Howard's busy. He's not going to correct me. It's fine. That's how they spoke back then. I just like making up my own history. And in the doctor's judgment, and he got it. Sorry. So he begged the doctor. He's begging him to tell him the whole truth, and he got it. In the doctor's judgment, he was utterly hopeless. Hopeless. And if you're writing in your book, make a note of that hopeless, because that is where I need to get to. I need to get to that place of hopelessness. And to be at a place of hopelessness is a condition of where I can see my alcoholism for what it really is. That's where I need to go. Hopeless. And it says he could never regain his position in society. So he could never be this fancy pants businessman, and would have to place himself under lock and key or hire a bodyguard if he expected to live long. That was a great physician's opinion. That, in that moment, was the best Dr. Carl Jung had to give him. You have money? Lock yourself up. Go put yourself in a real fancy institution. Or get a bodyguard. Get a big guy that'll like chase you around. And like, we think about that, you know? I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, I'm not moving fast, but I know I'm slipping a bodyguard to get drunk. You know what I mean? We know how, I remember in early sobriety, very early sobriety, I had a friend who wanted me to go out with with her to it wasn't even a bar, it was a club. And I was like, yeah, I'm just really, I don't think I even said newly sober, but I said I'm not drinking. And I'm just worried that I might not have that self-control. And God bless her. Do you know what she said? She said, I won't let you drink. Oh, and I know this is an expression that's used in the South. Bless your heart, you sweet summer child. Oh no, you're not going to be able to stop. No, that's not how that works. If I'm drinking. You're just a speed bump on the highway to inebriation is what you are. But I would read this line where it's like in the doctor's judgment, he's hopeless. He's got to get a bodyguard or put himself under lock and key if he's going to live long. And I would read that and I think, whoo, bad news, Roland. Sucks to be you, Mr. Throckmorton. I thought that'd be Thatcher, but I just wanted to tie it in. Sucks to be you. Sucks to be me. That's me. And if we're not sure of that, let's go back a page, bottom of page 25, very bottom paragraph. If you are seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe there is no middle of the road solution. Man, I wanted one. We were in a position where life was becoming impossible. And if we had passed into the region from which there is no return through human aid, we had but two alternatives. One was to go on to the bitter ends, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could, and the other to accept spiritual help. What that is telling me is that if I do not accept the spiritual help that is on offer in Alcoholics Anonymous, I am doomed to go on to the bitter ends. So it's not just bad news, Roland Hazard. It's bad news bears, bad news Paige, you know? Let's go to the bottom of page 24, just right across the page. And it says, when this sort of thinking, the thinking we are talking about is the mental obsession. That same thought that Roland Hazard had after he left Carl Jung that told him this time would be different. So this thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies. To be an individual with alcoholic tendencies is to have the physical allergy. He has probably placed himself beyond human aid and unless locked up, may die or go permanently insane. So it is not bad news, Roland. It is me. Bad news, Paige. And if you're like me, you have experience with the allergy, you have experience with the obsession. What that means is if we do not accept spiritual help, we'll either go on to the bitter ends, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we can, or we've got to accept the help that's on offer. Now, in this moment, back on 26, Roland Hazard does not know of the hope that is on offer. Roland Hazard does not know that there's a solution yet. But we're going to see the trajectory of Roland's, but more importantly for us, the trajectory of our lives change in this moment. So back to page 26, bottom paragraph. But this man still lives. and is a free man. So we see the bringing down the hammer of doom for the hopelessness. But here's the hope. But this man still lives and is a free man. He does not need a bodyguard, nor is he confined, which is good because bodyguard is definitely out of budget for me. I can't afford that. He can go anywhere on this earth other free men may go without disaster. And as I was telling you about that early sobriety, I couldn't go to the club because I just knew I wouldn't be able to stay away from that first drink. Today I could go anywhere on this earth. Just like in this moment, Roland Hazard could, provided that he remains willing to maintain a certain simple attitude. The certain simple attitude is that God keeps me sober. That's the attitude. And today, if I wanted to, I could go to that club. I do not want to. It's too loud. It's too loud. There's a lot of people. It's really overstimulating. So no thank you. But I could if I wanted to. I don't. I assure you. But that's what's important. Our sobriety is contingent upon that attitude. That attitude, the posture of my heart, this power that I don't know, that I don't necessarily like, and I barely believe in, is one that is going to keep me sober. And I've got to build that relationship with that power. And at top of page 27, one of the things I love about this book is this book does not expect me to be perfect. This book does not expect me to be like, I'd love to write inventory. I just can't wait to make amends. God, that word, I've got no issues or baggage with that. I'm completely open to what you're suggesting. The book is going to meet me in my resistance. The book is going to meet me in my denial, my resistance, my unwillingness. And we see it right here. Some of our readers may think they can do without spiritual help. So if I'm here at this point in the book and I'm like, I don't need spiritual help, I'm not open to a power beyond myself, the book is going to meet me where I'm at. And the most beautiful thing is it is going to take me where I need to go. So this is it taking me where I need to go. Let us tell you the rest of the conversation our friend had with his doctor. The doctor said, again, this is Carl Jung talking with Roland Hazard. And it says, the doctor said, you have the mind of a chronic alcoholic. And I just kind of want to point out mind. Because, of course, it's a problem if I have an allergy of the body. Once I start, I cannot stop. But my real problem is I have a thought that takes me back again and again to that first drink. Despite the fact that I know that it is ruining my life, I have the mind of a chronic alcoholic. And he is going to give us our diagnosis. So if we have experiences of the mental obsession, this is a diagnosis for us. Which actually, can I just throw out there? This is me seeing the book in a new way. That's why I keep doing this thing. You always see new stuff. Did you know there's little big book fairies that switch stuff up in the book? There's always new stuff in there. Delightful. Howard knows what's up. Yeah. So ultimately it's self-diagnosis. But I will point out, if I can relate to the diagnosis given from Dr. Carl Jung, I can absolutely stretch the truth and say, he diagnosed me. I've been diagnosed. Ooh. And what I will say is that's quite a bill. You know what I mean? To see Carl Jung, that would... I wouldn't be able to pay that one off. I don't have medical insurance. I couldn't pay that. You know what I'm saying? So we get a free diagnosis from Dr. Carl Jung. Yeah. Although wait and hear the diagnosis, because you might not be as jazzercised as I am in this moment. So you have the mind of a chronic alcoholic. I have never seen one single case recover where that state of mind existed to the extent that it does in you. So he is given the prognosis, and the prognosis is terminal. You cannot recover. This is a terminal illness. You are going to die of this thing. People like you do not recover. Terminal. And this is such a beautiful, important line. Our friend felt as though the gates of hell had closed on him with a clang. And it's such beautiful imagery of what's happened. The gates of hell closing on him with a clang. He sees that he's hopeless. He sees that there is no way out. That door is not, that does not swing both ways. You know what I'm saying? That door is closed. He is hopeless and he knows it. And you can almost feel him saying this from this deep place of fear and desperation. He said to the doctor, "Is there no exception?" "Yes," replied the doctor, "there is. Exceptions to such cases as yours have been occurring since early times. Here and there, once in a while, alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experiences." And in Alcoholics Anonymous, that is our, we'll do that. That is our experience. That is our solution in Alcoholics Anonymous. A vital spiritual experience. Vital as life-giving, because I'm going to die without it. Do you know what I'm saying? And spiritual experience. Now, before we go into define what a spiritual experience is, I'm going to tell a story. Now, its full historical accuracy will have to be fact-checked by Howard, but just feel free to ignore any corrections he makes. I always imagine it like this. There was this psychiatric conference, and I believe it was in the United States. And Sigmund Freud was there, and Carl Jung was there. And again, this is how I'm imagining it in my little brain. So imagine you've gone to a conference, maybe a roundup, maybe perhaps the Ladybug Roundup. See how I tied that in? See what I did there? And when there's like a main speaker and like everyone's packed in to see the main speaker, I just imagine Sigmund Freud walking the halls of the conference and everyone's like, "Ooh, Freud, I love Freud." And everyone's like getting in because they want to see Freud. Do you know what I'm saying? And then I just imagine Carl Jung, who's probably a little resentful of the guy. Maybe not. Maybe he's living his life. He's hanging out in the hallway by himself. And he starts talking to this American psychiatrist by the name of William James. Oh, gosh, no worries. Do I know what year Roland Hazard's meeting with Dr. Carl Jung was? From my understanding, there is some dispute. So I've heard it as 27, but I've also heard it as 31. Absolutely. So it was either 27 or 31, and Howard will correct me. I just have been delegating all fact checking to him. One half of the history husbands. Am I right, Mary? You got the other history husband there. All right. I didn't get their consent to call them that. I just thought it would be funny and started doing it. So as I continue on with my made up story, but like there is truth to it. Everyone's like, "Ooh, Freud. And Carl Jung's like, oh, Freud, am I right? He's so in his ego. It's a super ego." That's not what that means, but that's a funny joke. If you know anything about Freud, it's stupid. It's a silly little joke there. But he's hanging out, and who comes up to him and who's speaking to him is an American psychiatrist by the name of William James. And William James, we're going to see, he wrote this book. And it is this book called Varieties of Religious Experience. And so in their conversation, in their talking, for William James, this was his passion, studying these religious experiences, these vital spiritual experiences. That was his passion. He starts talking with Dr. Carl Jung. And perhaps a seed is planted. And so it goes on to say, this is what a vital spiritual experience looks like. This is what I need. This is what I need in order to have sobriety in Alcoholics Anonymous. It says, to me, these occurrences are phenomena. And it's really hard for me not to go, something like a phenomena. That song? Yeah, I know. By the way, if you're like, I said, do you know that song? I don't know the rest of the words. I just know that. It's a blessing and a curse. A phenomenon is something that can't really be explained. We don't quite know what it is. And it says they appear to be in the nature of huge emotional displacements and rearrangements. Ideas, emotions, and attitudes which were once the guiding forces of the lives of these men are suddenly, and I will emphasize suddenly, because it does not take long to recover. It does not take long to have a spiritual awakening. It does not take long to have a spiritual experience. We can recover, and we can recover quickly. And it says ideas, emotions, and attitudes which were once the guiding forces of the lives of these men are suddenly cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. And when I was going through this book in those kind of early years, this for me was the most simple explanation of a spiritual awakening. See, before the spiritual awakening, I had some ideas and I had some emotions, and believe me, I had some attitudes that were guiding my life. Things like fear, things like I gotta get what I want, things like there's not enough, things like what about me? Do you know what I mean? Those were resentments, were guiding my life. And very suddenly, it's gone and replaced with something new. Like, God is enough? Like, how can I be of service? You know, that sort of thing. Like, that. And it is such a beautiful description of what a spiritual awakening is. Now, I will say it's not a sneaky description. It's not, because it's telling us what it is. But I love to describe all the sneaky little descriptions. So how I'm showing up, what I think is important, it suddenly casts to one side and something new begins to flow through me. That's what I'm after. And he says, in fact, I've been trying to produce some such emotional rearrangements within you to put things in a different order. And it says, with many individuals, the methods which I employed are successful. But I have never been successful with an alcoholic of your description. Now, I'll be honest, the spiritual appendix, I always like to pretend like, ew, the spiritual appendix, let's not go there, ew. Because I like finding my sneaky descriptions. But we will go there, just not today. Because there's a point in We Agnostics where it says, please, and then I'm going to make that joke. Okay, because you asked me nicely, then we'll go to the spiritual appendix in the back of the book. So, because I'm like that, don't you worry. But one of the things I'll point out is, and I'll tell you this story a couple of times, but this is a point in the book where I just feel called to tell this story a little bit early, and maybe it's because we're talking about our guy, Dr. Carl Jung. There's this famous BBC interview of Dr. Carl Jung. And they're interviewing him, and they ask him, and they don't call him Carl because they're all respectful and stuff. But and I can't get away with things because it's a video, so it's on tape. But they ask him, growing up, did you believe in God? And he said, yeah, growing up, I believed in God. And then they said, do you believe in God now? And Carl Jung, Dr. Carl Jung says, no. And there's a pause. And then he says, I've got no need for belief. And there's a pause. And he says, I know. And I'm going to talk about that a couple times, but that is what I'm after. The spiritual awakening is not an idea. It is not an idea of a power that is out there. It is an experience of a power that is working in my life. That's what I'm after. And I'm just going to emphasize this because I don't know about you. I wasn't interested in the idea of alcohol. We could sit us down and we could talk about all the effects of alcohol. That's not what I needed. What I needed was a drink. Do you know what I'm saying? I was after the effect. And it's just like that in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not after an idea. I'm not after a conception. I am after an experience. So it says, upon hearing this, our friend was somewhat relieved, for he reflected that after all, he was a good church member. So our boy, Roland Hazard, he's like, whew, thank goodness, a spiritual experience? That's all I need. Whew, good news, I go to church. And it says, this hope, however, was destroyed by the doctors telling him that while his religious convictions were very good, they, in his case, they did not spell the necessary vital experience. So Dr. Carl Jung has said, like, it's great. It's great that you go to church because that means you're already open to a power greater than yourself. But the odds of this thing happening to you are like the odds of you getting struck by lightning. You can't hang out in a church pew and hope this thing happens for you. You've got to go out and find it. And just to kind of tie in the history a little bit. So Roland Hazard, armed with the knowledge of what our solution is, it's kind of right by my head, which is a spiritual awakening. He had some impetus. He knows that if he doesn't do this, he is going to drink again, and he's going to continue to drink, and he's going to continue to relapse. Well, what was growing in popularity at that time was known as the Oxford Group. And it was a group of religious people who was after and seeking this deeper experience of God, just to create an oversimplification of what they were about. And Roland Hazard's like, oh, dude, I need one of those. That's what he said verbatim. Dude, I need a spiritual experience. I need a spiritual awakening. And so the Oxford Group had a series of actions that any human being could take that would produce a deeper experience of this power, the power that they believed in. And that course of action later became our 12 steps. Now, Roland Hazard, he gets involved with the Oxford Group. He stays sober, and then he carries that message to Ebby Thatcher. While Ebby Thatcher's on trial for his shenanigans, Roland Hazard shows up and offers him knowledge of what the solution is and what the program of action is. Ebby Thatcher, Throckmorton, our guy, he then has those two vital pieces of information. And when he goes and carries that message to Bill Wilson had met Dr. Silkworth, for our purposes, we'll say twice, more than twice, but twice for our purposes, where he learned of what his problem was. He learned from Dr. Silkworth the physical allergy and the mental obsession. And he learned that it was a hopeless condition. He learned that he was doomed to die drunk. And in that moment when our guy, Ebby Thatcher, Throckmorton, shows up, Bill Wilson has the three pieces of information. He knows what his problem is. Physical allergy, mental obsession. He knows what the solution is. That vital spiritual experience, a spiritual awakening, that's what we need. And the program of action, what later became our 12 steps. So I just wanted to, screen share that while we got it. Alrighty. And so, the odds of this thing happening to you are the odds of you getting struck by lightning. You've got to go out and find it. And what a beautiful way that we have to replicate that which was a 1 in a million experience. So top of page 28, here was the terrible dilemma in which our friend found himself when he had the extraordinary experience. Not idea, not opinion, not belief, but experience. That's what I need, an experience, which, as we have already told you, made him a free man. And keep in mind, I am not a free person if I am not recovered. What that means is that I will drink again. The gates of hell have closed on me with a clang, and I am locked in that cycle of alcoholism where I will drink again, I will drink again, I will drink again, I will drink again. Or if you're like me and you can stay sober a little while, I'm going to kill myself before I drink again. Do you know what I'm saying? That is the gates of hell. And how do I get out of that? How do I get to freedom? It is the 12 steps that produce the spiritual awakening. And that's what I need. And it says, we in our turn sought the same escape with all the desperation of drowning men. And to be drowning is to be like with some desperation. There's some intensity. There is some urgency with this. Do you know what I mean? It's not take your time, because if you're drowning, it's actually really dangerous to rescue people that are drowning, because they'll grab a hold of anything and they're likely to take you down because there's a tremendous sense of urgency. Not like, I'm sorry, that life preserver, that one doesn't match my eyes. I need one that matches my eyes. Or like, no, I want the cutie lifeguard to throw the thing. You know what I mean? Because when we're drowning, we are not particular. I need to be saved, but I don't need to be saved in my own way. I need to be saved. So it says, what seemed at first a flimsy reed has proved, which is experiential, to be the loving and powerful hand of God. a new life, which is a new way of life. Or if you, new life has been given us, or if you prefer, a design for living, which is another to say way of life that really works. And I love the metaphor that we see in that paragraph. And it's one of those things, I could do like a half an hour long talk on that little paragraph. And I have, because I'm fun. But I don't know about you. See, I was living my life before alcohol, and it was like I was living in the desert. Now, this is not diagnostic of alcoholism, but helpful to know that I'd never felt well my whole life. And my whole life, I was after some form of relief. I was after some sort of release. And I come to the edge of the shores of alcohol. And I wade in just a little bit, and I take a sip, and wouldn't you know, it quenches my thirst. And so I wade in a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. And wouldn't you know it, that body of water, man, that river, it has got an undercurrent. And that undercurrent is the physical allergy, and it starts taking me along the river with it. And I'm like, oh man, and I'm trying to do everything I can to control the amount that I drink and still enjoy it. I'm trying to, drink water between drinks or smoke crack in between drinks. To be honest, that was a thing that I tried. You'll be shocked to know it wasn't effective. But I would try all these things to fix, manage, and control my allergy. But wouldn't you know, the longer that I'm in that river, the stronger that current gets. And there's more water in that river, and it starts taking me, and I can't touch the bottom anymore. And I am in trouble. And I know that I've got to get out of that river. I know that I'm going to drown if I stay here. I know I can never drink again. And you see, if you've ever seen a river at flood, you know that there is debris. And I am grabbing a hold of anything and everything that I can. So there are some logs going by, and I'm trying to grab a hold of that log, and it's that log of, maybe a relationship, and it's, slippery, and I fall in. And that log hits me over the head, and I start drowning again. And I see another piece of debris, and I'm trying to grab a hold of it. But as soon as I grab a hold of it, it starts to sink. And it starts to pull me down under with it. And that can be things like going to the gym. It could be just going to meetings. It could be all these things that I try for me to stay sober. Do you know what I'm saying? And I start drowning, and it doesn't work. And I start to see the hopelessness. I'm grabbing a hold of these things, and things I'm grabbing a hold of are only making it worse. And then what I see is what looks like a flimsy reed. God, Paige, God. Spiritual awakening. And I'm worried it's going to, like everything else I tried to grab a hold of, I'm going to grab a hold of this thing, and it's going to pull out of the riverbed. It feels like a flimsy reed. There's no depth to it. There's no weight to it. I'm going to grab a hold of it. And it's going to pull out of the riverbed, and it's going to go with me down the river, and I'm doomed. I'm doomed. But you know what happens is I grab a hold of it, and how I grab a hold of that flimsy reed is the 12 steps. You see, I make that decision to grab a hold of it. I believe it exists in step 2. I make a decision in step 3 to grab a hold of it. In step 4, I put my hands around it. In step 5, I'm grabbing tight. In step 6 and 7, I begin to be pulled out. In 8 and 9, I make the amends, and I start to find myself on the riverbed. In 10, 11, 12, I'm there, and I'm in safety. Do you know what I'm saying? As I grab a hold of that flimsy reed in my hand, it turns into the powerful and loving hand of God who takes me out to safety. The second time today, I do this whole talk about in God's hands versus in my hands. And my life in my hands, I assure you, dumpster fire at best. God's hands, so much better, infinitely better. And it says the distinguished, delightful, American psychologist William James, in his book, Varieties of Religious Experience. When did we talk about that guy? Just there a little bit, right? William James indicates a multitude of ways in which men have discovered God. And it was shortly after Bill Wilson's spiritual experience that he was given the book Varieties of Religious Experience to kind of explain what had happened to him. And his spiritual experience was one of the luminous variety, which is described in Varieties of Religious Experiences. And the book Varieties of Religious Experience, I promise you I'm not a history husband, despite my love of that piece of literature. Maybe I could be a history husband. There's a couple question marks up in the air. But despite, I love that book. And it's, by the way, there's some stuff in there. Like, ooh, sometimes people describe it as dry, and I'm like, that's fair and accurate. But if you get to Saintliness Part 2, it's got some stuff in there. Like, ooh. But what I will say is part of one of the reasons I love the book, and it really was a series of lectures that William James did in Scotland that were written down or transcribed. But the reason that I love that book is it connected some dots that I couldn't connect on my own. So the book is so William James never had a spiritual experience. If you're looking for an author, most people aren't, but if you're looking for an author that had an experience with spiritual experience, a firsthand experience, Evelyn Underhill, she wrote in the early 1900s about her experience, and she is a bad A. By which I mean I love her. She's great. And she kind of like contrasts William James, because William James's was a purely educational study of spiritual experiences. And his kind of whole deal was like, if I'm going to study these things, I'm going to go hard. Do you know what I mean? If I'm going to study these, I'm going to look at the big experiences, the experiences that people have had that have started movements, that have changed the world. So that was sort of his really place of interest. Like that was his hyperfixation, and he was into it. And why I love it is it connected some dots. So one of the things I had heard in meetings for a long time was that meditation didn't mean meditation in the 1930s, which is only true if the only work that I do on that is look it up in a 1930s dictionary. Because in a 1930s dictionary, it will say to think, to contemplate. But in Varieties of Religious Experience, he doesn't talk at all about meditation, but he mentions a variety of people who had meditative, contemplative practices that had been around since the medieval times and carried on into the 1930s, including St. Teresa of Avila, including St. John of the Cross. Somebody says there's no such thing as guided meditations. Oh, well, you take that up in the 1930s, you take that up with St. Francis de Sales in his book, Philothea, or Introduction to the Devout Life. That's a guided meditation book. What we are seeing is me going on a rant, and I am being pedantic, but it was one of those things where it connected these dots. And it was a beautiful experience for me. So I really, really enjoy that book. And it tied together some things that, yeah, just so you know, meditation, yep, it meant meditation. And the Oxford group, they meditated. And their meditation wasn't sitting around thinking about things. Their meditation was waiting for an intuitive thought from God. It was about expectancy and receptivity, which is to say, not me thinking, but me listening to So meditation, that's all. That's my rant. Oh, I got 5 more minutes. Yeah, poor Kathy. She's like, yeah, I make this joke that I've only got 3 hills that I die on. One is that meditation absolutely meant meditation in the 1930s. The other is that you can recover. That's my other hill. You can, you can recover. That's my other hill. And my third hill is that it's spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection, not progress, not perfection. Those are my hills upon which I shall perish. All other hills, you do you. But that one I'm dying on. Alrighty. So it indicates and it's a multitude. He's got a lot of examples of spiritual experience in that book. So it says, indicates a multitude of ways in which men have discovered God. We have no desire to convince anyone that there is only one way by which faith can be acquired. If what we have learned and felt and seen means anything at all. And I want to point something out. If what we have learned and felt and seen, that is not an idea, that is not a belief, what they are referencing is experience. If our experience is anything, and it's everything, it means anything at all, it means that all of us, yes you, all of us, whatever our race, creed, or color, are the children of a living Creator, with whom we may form a relationship upon simple and understandable terms, as soon as we are willing and honest enough to try. What is being asked of me is to try. And how do I try? What do I have to try at? The 12 steps is a way of life. That's what I'm trying at. That's it. But I love that this is a book written by white dudes in the 1930s. And what do we see there? That all of us are the children of a living Creator. And I love that idea of God as a present tense verb. God in the here and now, and not as an idea, but as action, as movement in the here and now. And that we can form a relationship. And y'all know me, I'm big on that relational view. I don't need power, I need a relationship with power. The power is not of me, but the power needs to flow through me. I need that relationship. And that means all of us. And I got some news about all of us. What that means, and I'm going to ruin your day, and I apologize in advance, especially before the American holiday of getting together with family, which is always easy and not an issue for anyone, that you will never look in the eyes of somebody that God does not love. You will never look in the eyes of somebody God does not love. And what that means is not that we go around like this. I want to be mad at you. I'm not looking. That's not the takeaway. But the takeaway is that God loves each and every one of us. Loves you exactly as you are in this moment. That is the takeaway. Welcome. We're on page 28. And so all that is asked of me is to try. It says, those having religious affiliations will find here nothing disturbing to their beliefs or ceremonies. There is no friction among us over such matters. And that is incredible. And so part of why varieties of religious experience is so interesting and so exciting to me is that I love seeking spiritually. I love seeking spiritually from a variety, and I do mean a variety of faith traditions. And what I have found is that if it is truth, it is truth. And if it is, it's too small, I can't read what you're putting in. Oh, you got William James Varieties of Religious Experience. Delightful. Yeah, but it was way far from the camera. I can't see that. I look at all y'all. So you're a small square, but you're a big square in God's heart. You're pinned to the Zoom. You're the main speaker pinned to the Zoom in God's heart is what you guys are. See, all of you pinned to God's heart. I don't know why I'm like this. But if it's true, it's true. And if it's truth, I can find it in whatever faith that I'm seeking. And if it's true, I'll find it in any healthy spirituality. That doesn't mean I can just leave AA and go do that, because I got to stay rooted and grounded in this, because my life depends on doing this and helping drunks like me. But there's something that this speaks to truth, is that this is not in contrast or confliction with any healthy spirituality. Any healthy spirituality. And it's it's like, it's an incredible thing that I've been able to sponsor people who have had, a variety of faiths and beliefs and religions and cultures and practices. And it's true, and it's true, and it's true. And, it was this is a number of years ago. There was a Jewish ceremony, and I was doing that outside, and you needed a candle for it. And I had a candle that was the Virgin of Guadalupe that was given to me at a Blackfoot Sundance ceremony. And I was like, yep, this encapsulates my little spirituality, just hitting and checking all the boxes. You know what I mean? So yeah, if it's true, it's true, it's true. And there is truth to what we have in this book and the directions contained within. It says, we think it no concern of ours what religious bodies our members identify themselves with as individuals. This should be an entirely personal affair. which each one decides for himself in the light of past associations or his present choice. Not all of us join religious bodies, but most of us favor such memberships. I just want to put that in context, because if you're like, hey, you're pressuring me into going to church or going to religion, I just want to contextualize it. If I get a copy of this book in 1939 or 1940 or 1941, I am meant to follow these directions alone in Calgary, Alberta, and we got snow. I just want you to feel bad for me. But I'm meant to follow these directions alone in Calgary, Alberta. I don't have a sponsor. I'm starting the meetings. Do you know what I mean? And if I am called to grow spiritually or connect with people who are on the spiritual path, where would I go? Well, I would probably go to a local church in the late 1930s, early 1940s. Now in 2024, we got options. We got Big Book Studies. And you can throw Big Book Study info in the chat, Howard. See what I did there? We got podcasts, meditation apps. There are all these ways that we can grow spiritually. And I hope you guys don't mind. I know Vivian likes that I stop 5 minutes early, but if possible, I think it would be great to finish the chapter. But if you're like, no, stop now, you tell me that. I'm good at following directions, which is how I recovered. Following directions. So, in the following chapter, there appears an explanation of alcoholism as we understand it. Then a chapter addressed to the agnostic, and that chapter is going to dive into step 2. Many who were once in that class are now among our members. Surprisingly enough, we find that such convictions no great obstacle to a spiritual experience. What that means is what I think, I'm going to politely say, does not matter. What matters is what I do. What I think, what I believe, how I feel does not matter. What I do is what matters. And it says further on, clear-cut directions are given showing how we recovered. There's that, recovered. And clear-cut directions. That's why we would go through this book line by line, page by page, word by word. So it says, these are followed by 42 personal experiences. And the 42 personal experiences are doing in the book what I am called to do in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. So in the meetings, in the rooms, and when I share my story, this is what I am called to do. It says each individual in the personal stories describes in his own language and is from his own point of view the way he established his relationship with God. I am to talk about the spiritual awakening and how I got it through the results of these 12 steps. That's what I'm called to speak on. These give a fair cross-section of our membership and a clear-cut idea of what has actually happened in their lives. Again, we're not talking about ideas or theories. We're talking about experience. We hope no one will consider these self-revealing accounts in bad taste. Our hope is that many alcoholic men and women desperately in need will see these pages, and we believe that it is only by fully disclosing ourselves and our problems that they will be persuaded to say, yes, I am one of them too. I must have this thing. I've got to understand and relate to the hopelessness before I can grab a hold of the hope. So what I will do is stop the recording, and then I'll do it so we can have some shares.